Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It is actually a clear but cold day, 49 degrees here in Northern Illinois. And today's video, I wanted to discuss the second EV that we just bought. So, why am I in the Model 3? Well, before I tell you what we bought, I want to give you a little hint, see if anybody can guess. So, it is an EV that's very much like my Model 3. It's very similar. So let me give you the ways that it is similar. One, it's an EV, that's obvious, but it's an EV with the battery under the floor. Number two, it's white. Number three, it's got white wheels. Now here's a bit of a hint. They're white wheels from the factory. They were white. What else? Well, this is a big one for you. Number four, it's rear wheel drive and rear motor. So think about that for a while. There's not much that fits that description. So I'm kind of leading you guys along, but it's a basic little car. There's really nothing fancy about it, but come up with your guess. You ready to see it? All right, here we go. We picked up a little smart electric drive as a spare car. Now, if for those of you that have been watching the channel for a long time will remember this car. This car actually belonged to my daughter, my adult daughter. She's been married for a couple years. She's in her career, and this was the first car that she bought with her own money. And my wife and I helped them purchase this car. And so she was all excited to get it, and I find it fascinating that it's quite the millennial thing. The very first car she bought was electric. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this car, it is a smart electric drive. This particular car is a 2014 model, and smart as a mark is actually a cooperative conglomeration. It was Swatch, the company that made those funky watches back when my generation were teenagers. Well, that design company partnered with Mercedes-Benz, and from my understanding, the smart name comes from Swatch, Mercedes, Art. And in combination, they came out with the name Smart, combining those words together. And this car, it's sort of a fascinating case study. When Mercedes-Benz was looking to make this car electric, actually Tesla, much of Tesla's existence is owed to Mercedes-Benz. Some of you probably already know this, but many don't. Mercedes-Benz approached Tesla to partner with them to make the electric powertrain for this car. Now, this particular car, this is a 2014, I believe this is a Bosch electric system in this car, but the very early smart electric drives used a Tesla battery and power unit. And Tesla was hired to develop the electric powertrain to fit in the smart gas car chassis. And what they did, they were given a very brief period of time. I don't know if it was 30 days or something, but you couldn't even get a gas-powered smart car in the States at the time. So Tesla had one of their employees go down to Mexico, buy a brand new gas-powered smart car, drive it to California, where they disassembled it and put a Tesla Roadster drive unit and partial battery pack in the smart car. And they had very little time to do this. They barely got it done in time, so they didn't even have a chance to reprogram the inverter. So my understanding, as the story goes, that the first smart electric drive prototype with the Tesla Roadster powertrain would pull wheelies. And it so impressed Mercedes-Benz that Tesla got, I think it was $50 million investment from Mercedes, as well as the contract to build the electric powertrains for this car. And that $50 million is one of the many things that saved Tesla. So at least back then, that was huge for Tesla. And so there begins the history of this particular car. And now I have a bit of an interesting mindset when it comes to this car, and a little bit of an interesting history as well. I do appliance repair, and way back, oh my goodness, I don't want to misquote, but maybe 20 years ago or something, I was approached, or I wasn't approached, I was spoken to by an appliance repair customer of mine who had shown me some pictures. I think he was looking for investors at the time, but had shown me some pictures of this car, and he said, yeah, Swatch, the company that makes watches, is looking at making this car, and he said, I want to import them. Now, again, it was not the electric version, it was the gas version, but this gentleman, a local customer of mine, was trying to become the U.S. importer for the gas version of the very first smart car, which at the time was still just Swatch. And I'm sure there were other people that were trying to import it as well, but he was one of them. And so ever since that day, I remember this car. And in fact, at the time, it was presented as it would have a 600cc, essentially motorcycle engine. And now, for those of you that don't know much about me, I hate waste. I love efficiency. Now, that doesn't just mean energy efficiency, although obviously that is a big concern for me, but also just efficiency overall. And so that would be efficiency in materials use, efficiency in space conservation. I like efficiency. So this car seems to have efficiency in spades. It is energy efficient. It is also space efficient. Not just that it's a small car and it doesn't take up much room. There's a lot of things, such as the floor. There's much more depth on the driver's floor than there is on the passenger floor. The passenger seat is moved further back than the driver's seat, and that allows for enough footroom for both passengers, and yet there's so little room up in the nose of this car for steering and suspension and that this provides more room under the floor for in front of the firewall, so to speak, for equipment to operate the car. Let's see here. There is inside the packaging in this car, I'm 5'10", and I've got plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom. The seat is not all the way back. In fact, it's probably only halfway in its adjustment distance. So just parking as well. It's really easy to park this car. But the reason that I bought this particular car is my wife and I, we like having a spare car. Now, other than we have 4 cars total. My Tesla Model 3, my wife has a Ford Fusion. It is not a hybrid, it's an all-wheel drive Ford Fusion, actually great car. And then we have a all-wheel drive BMW convertible, brand new car. That's our weekend fun car. But we like having a spare car that if one of our primary cars goes down, I mean, we could always use the convertible, but we wanted some little bitty runabout that is inexpensive to use and is that we're not so worried about. I'm not going to take the BMW and do service calls with it. I would take my wife's car, and but that, I don't know, we try and save the BMW for weekends. And also, I have a 16-year-old son that will be getting his license soon, and he has his driver's permit currently. And so we wanted a car that was small and efficient and reliable that he could use. So I had been looking at Nissan Leafs and that, and this car sort of fell into our lap. This car was owned by my daughter, as I mentioned earlier, and she and her husband were buying a car that would have more range. Basically, she drives, if she's not using heat or AC, she works 26 miles from home. So basically, at best, round trip, it used about half the charge. This car's rated at 68 miles, but she said she gets more than 90 out of it if she's not if she's just driving, say, 40 miles per hour and not using the climate control at all, which is great. But she said the problem is if she uses the AC or the heat, suddenly her round trip isn't 50 or 55% of the charge, it's more like 80% of the charge. And she said on the coldest winter days, she was finding that she had to plug in at work, or she would get to work having used 55% of her range just to get to work. So she said it was becoming cumbersome. Also, they wanted a car that she only had access to 110 volt charging, and they wanted a car that they weren't hamstrung by the slow charging speed. So they are purchasing from my father a Generation 1 Chevy Volt. They love the whole EV thing, but they wanted a car that range was not an issue at all. And a short range EV works great for her for 75% of their life. But the remaining 25% of their life, this car just really didn't suit them. And so they had an opportunity, actually I had an opportunity to buy my father's Gen 1 Chevy Volt, but they approached me and asked, she said, "Dad, can my husband and I buy the Volt from you?" And I said, "Sure." And then they put this car for sale. Now the market value of this car is probably $6,500, somewhere in that range. And they paid a little bit more than that for it when they bought it. And my wife and I we weren't desperate to buy another car. We had a little used Saturn for my son, but he loved this car. He did a lot of driving in it, and with his permit, and me in the passenger seat, and he really loved this car. And so I talked to my wife about it, and I said, my magic number is $5,000. I said I might pay $5,500, but I said if they get down to the point where they just want to dump it for $5,000, I'll take it. But I said I'm not going to offer them $5,000 for it and feel like I'm just looking to steal it from them. Well, so we didn't even mention to them that we were interested at all. I got a phone call from my son-in-law, and he said, "Look, it's a bad time of year to try and sell this car. Cold weather's approaching, and they just don't sell well this time of year." He said, "We had one guy offer us $5,000 cash for it, and he said, but we'd rather keep it in the family. So if you guys would like it, we'll take $5,000 for it." He said, "We did the math and what it saved us in gas over the duration we've owned it, and that." He said, we feel that that's $5,000 is worth it to us." So my wife and I discussed it, and now we have this car. So at $5,000 investment, that's very good. It's a 2014. It's in excellent condition. It's got 32,000 miles on it, and it is a car that is perfect for us. Now, if this car fell into our laps, and that's why we bought it. That's the primary reason that we got it. But I was looking at Nissan Leafs, and for those of you that are curious about that, yes, Nissan Leafs, it's easy to get one with a bad battery, but there is actually a battery internal capacity meter on the dash, and you look for how many bars. I believe it's 11 bars is a 100% internal capacity pack. So if you're looking at a Nissan Leaf, you can see how many bars are showing, and if you see that it's got 8 or 9 bars, then yeah, the battery's been harmed. But if you're at, I believe it's 11 bars is a healthy pack. So I know how to shop for a Leaf, and honestly, I kind of like them. They're not a bad car. They're not exactly attractive, but this thing isn't either. But looks were kind of, not really a concern. We wanted something that was reliable and was easy to park and inexpensive and perfect for our son. Also, this car is a short-range EV, is absolutely perfect for his needs. I didn't want something that he could drive really far. I mean, he's only going to be driving 20 or 30 miles at a time, and then he'd come home and plug it in. So I put a level 2 charger in my house. Now this thing only charges at a 3.3 kilowatt rate. That's the onboard charger, but I can still use that charger for the Tesla if I want. But using that charger will charge this car, and I believe it's rated at 4.5 hours. But that's from 0 to 100%. Most often you do some errand running, plug it in for an hour, hour and a half, and you've gained back what you just used in the errands you ran. So it's the 3.3 kilowatts is perfect amount of charging time for us. And this I plan on doing some more videos on this car, because there was one other reason that it seemed attractive to me to obtain this car, and that was that to a lesser extent than the Model 3, but this car does have a little bit of a cult following to it, and I figured there would be quite a bit of curiosity regarding this little smart car. And so I want to do some efficiency testing for you guys. So for instance, in this drive, I've used 13% of my battery range, and I've gone 10.8 miles. So, and my daughter said that that was the case. She said that if you're not on the expressway and you're not flooring it, you're not using the HVAC, if you're just cruising at 40 miles an hour around town and that it's about 90 miles of range, and which seems to be good. I'm glad to know that the 68 miles of range that this car is rated for is a realistic range. That means you can drive it at 55 miles an hour. You can use the heat or whatever, or the AC, and still expect to get a good solid 68 miles of range out of it. But if you're not using the climate control and you're keeping it under 60 miles an hour, driving maybe 40 around town mostly, then yeah, the range is going to be way up over 80 miles, more like 90. And there's a few guys online that have reported getting 100 miles out of these cars if they're just real careful with it, but whatever. So so that's the scoop with it. And I will be this video was primarily what is the car, why did we get this particular car, and I will go over all of the specs and some particulars about the car in a second follow-up video. And then probably one video out of every 5 or 6 that I do on my channel will be something related to this car. And this is one interesting thing I'll point out, though. This car is regen like the Model 3. When you let off, it regens, but you only get about 50% of your regen just by letting off. When you initially hit the brake pedal, you gain more regen, and there's a power use meter here that explains that. And so it's pretty cool. You can if you let off, you'll get a decent amount of regen, but if you hit the brake pedal, you'll get a lot of regen, and then if you hit the brake pedal even further, the mechanical brakes will kick in beyond that. Some basic specs of the car: it's a 17.5 kilowatt hour battery pack, disc brakes up front, drum brakes at the rear. I believe the motor and inverter are 55 kilowatts. So that would be, what, 77 horsepower or something like that. The car weighs, if I remember correctly, 1,800 pounds. If I remember correctly, that might be the gas version. But anyway, it's under 2,000 pounds. So a very lightweight car. It is 11 feet long. I'll have to check on the length of it. And but it's just a great little runabout car. It is quirky. I'd say it's one of the ugliest cars ever made, but ugly in a, I don't know, ugly in a sort of a quirky way. In this, I hate to use this. For those of you that have one of these dogs, I apologize if I sound like I'm insulting you, but this car reminds me of a pug dog. So ugly that it's cute. So take that how you will, but that's my opinion of it personally. And nothing spectacular. I'm sure some of you guys will feel let down that you find out this is the second EV we got, but I was letting you guys know it was a short range used EV, not a big deal. But I am excited about it because it's a fascinating car. It really is. It is. This car is the essence of how basic you can make usable transportation. I mean, as tiny as this thing is, I'm 5'10". I've got plenty of headroom and leg room, and there's actually a decent amount of room behind the seats. And again, I'll do a full walk around video of the car as a follow-up video to this. So anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up, like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I just hit 15,000 subscribers this morning, so thank you guys very much. That's another thing. My channel is earning enough per month that actually purchasing this car, between channel revenue and some profit being made off the Model 3 screen mounts and that, is pretty much what's paying for this car. So I appreciate that, and hopefully there'll be more EVs in our future coming up here. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, take it easy, guys. Bye-bye now.